And so that is super exciting for us here. We don't have to wait for that 5 a.m. phone call. And, my kids will stay up extra late tonight, but what am I going to do about it? So I'm super excited to be here tonight to talk to you about Schoology. I get probably way too excited and super geeky about anything about digital learning. But I have a lot of experience with Schoology. Currently, I am a high school instructional coach, but I'm also the system administrator for Schoology for our entire district. And I'm the lead trainer for all grades. We use Schoology K-12. We now opened a virtual academy, so those kinders are using Schoology. And we use it in combination K2 with some Seesaw. But I'm the lead trainer for all of our teachers, most of our families. I have taught, though, in probably every LMS vendor that's out there, whether it was through my district teaching high school, but also for many years, I was an adjunct professor for Marygrove College in Detroit in their Master of Education department. And we went through myriad of vendors there. So I am also a national board certified teacher in science. My classroom background is primarily science and math, mostly chemistry, biology, algebra 2, geometry. But as we mentioned before, my favorite winter activity here in Michigan is definitely downhill skiing. I have 2 boys, a 6th grader and a 2nd grader, and they have officially surpassed my skiing abilities. So I spend my time chasing them down the Black Diamonds. And as they like to say, I always come in last, but I'm okay with that. So with all of that in mind, we are going to dive into some things. I think many of us are probably a little more Zoom savvy than we ever wanted to be. But in case your district is a Teams user or Google Meets, just a few kind of brief reminders. Your mute is over on the far left of your Zoom bar, which you can drag around on your screen. Your camera, you can turn that on and off as needed. The chat's kind of in the middle. And every once in a while, I might ask for something on that reaction button. When I was with my students, I would always call it signs of life and try to make sure that the audience is still with me. So maybe a thumbs up or a little party hat, just to kind of know you're still with me. And then obviously at the very far right, if you have to leave the meeting early, feel free to. I know Chad will be sending out recordings to everyone that registered after our session. So another thing for you to know about, Chad will be sending out the link to this presentation. However, if you did want to follow along now, you are welcome to take your phone and kind of scan this QR code. You do not need to take frantic notes throughout our session. You'll see I've embedded many step-by-step directions and some mini videos that I won't play this evening, but they will be great for you to go back to later if you need a little prompting and a little reminder.
Now you're just showing off. Now you're just showing off, Kathleen. Your QR code game. Come on.
I know. This is like what I do. I love, but I love spending my day doing all of our trainings, and many of them obviously have been virtual for these last many months. So just one thing to think about to kind of kick off, why we're here this evening. There is an incredible potential for digital technology in and beyond the classroom, but it is vital to rethink how learning is organized if we are to reap the rewards. And so one of the things I have really discovered over the last 2 years now, pretty much, as we've all navigated through this, is how critical the teacher presenting that learning in an organized fashion, how critical that is for students. And probably our struggling and resistant learners are the ones that this becomes the most evident for. And so anything that we can do as educators to reduce their frustration, reduce the number of clicks or their ability to get digitally lost is only going to help their outcomes. Additionally, for many of you on, I kind of wrote down a few friends here, Anne and Tara or Tara, Autumn. We had some friends that are younger early elementary teachers. And so with those learners, we really also have to think about who are their learning partners at home, and really making sure that what we are presenting is also friendly to them as well. I know when we were in the thick of the COVID closure, I was still working as an instructional coach and was actually really busy helping our teachers, which meant that my 2 school-age children were kind of left on their own, which very quickly we realized wasn't going to work. Then had to hire someone to come into our home to help them. And so it really needed to be friendly so that whoever was the learning partner for that day could kind of jump in and navigate the systems. So as I speak tonight, I'm really going to try to speak from that K-12 perspective. And so hopefully even our early L teachers will get some ideas on ways that they can help their little ones. So tonight we're going to be kind of broken into 4 key areas when we really focus on how you can optimize your organization. We're going to first look at folders in Schoology and how you can organize and subdivide your course. We're going to look at how you can use visuals to enhance your presentation, but visuals are really, really critical for those early L learners. There's something called student completion rules in Schoology. Some other vendors call them mastery pathways, but it's a way for you to kind of hold students accountable on a set learning path so they can't kind of jump forward or only do what they want to do, but they're really kept in lockstep for what you have prescribed as the best path for them. And then for those of you that are Schoology users, we're going to offer up a little bit of playtime where you can maybe try some things out if you have a Schoology course that's running, or maybe an old one that you would like to play in. And then, certainly have someone on hand if you had any questions or something like that. So let's dive in. One thing I want to make note of is that Schoology this fall did roll out a new elementary course theme. And so that is now available to all enterprise districts. And what that means is that your district pays for Schoology, so that you're not a free user, but you're a paid or enterprise district. And this elementary course theme kind of looks a little bit more Seesaw-esque, if you're familiar with Seesaw, but it gives us larger buttons and kind of simplifies the view for those students. My favorite thing about this is that the teacher is able to turn this on or off themselves. So in my high school, we have some self-contained special ed classrooms that also use this elementary course theme. And so I love that it offers that flexibility and versatility for the student to know what best fits their audience. And that, we have this way that we can kind of simplify some things for our younger learners. So some of the pictures I'm going to show you tonight are going to be from the more traditional, or what they call the secondary course theme. But again, everything I'm showing is applicable using that elementary course theme. And I'm going to shut my office door for a minute because my custodian just kind of walked through my building. So hang on. Sorry about that. Okay, so when we think about folders, there's kind of 3 or 4 really big things I want you to think about tonight. And that's kind of your nesting system. So if you think about like a closet at home or your kitchen, you know, you have chosen a system to organize. You put your coffee cups with the coffee cups, and those coffee cups are probably by your other drinking glasses. If we're looking at your closet, you know, you probably have your pants all in one area, whether they are casual or work pants. You probably have shirts in another area. So think about what's that nesting structure. And then I highly recommend using some color coding, because we know how important that can be with students. And then thinking about, instead of chronological order, but actually using a reverse chronological order. And we're going to look at why that's really important for our students. So depending on your age level, you can kind of think about how you may choose to organize. And you might even think about what your traditional brick and mortar classroom looks like, and that might help you to decide how you want to organize a digital space. If you're elementary and you teach all the subjects, you're probably going to start with doing some subject organization. So you might have an ELA folder, a math folder, social studies, etc. If you are a secondary classroom and you are teaching just one subject per hour, you might choose to use units. Maybe it's by genre of writing. If it's by math, it might be by standard or by your units in your textbook. And then some teachers choose instead to actually organize by date. So they might actually have things organized by, you know, the month of October, the month of November, and within that have week 1, week 2, week 3. And so teachers kind of need to think about what might fit best for their audience. So what might that look like for you? So on your far left, you see what it might look like for an elementary teacher to use subject folders. And again, I'm going to talk later about the importance of using these visuals, but you'll notice there that we kind of have used a visual, attach that visual to the folder to kind of help our students know what is what. Especially when we think about those kinders, maybe even our first graders, they may not be able to read those words, or even maybe our EL students. Here in Novi, we have a really large EL population. So visuals are great for any age. Again, secondary, kind of in the middle, you might choose to use that idea of unit folders. What I'm going to encourage is that you put the active folder in a different color. So really to draw that eye for the student and that learning partner potentially at home for where the live action is at. And then I do recommend this idea of reverse chronological order, but where you put the most recent material at the top. And this is one difference from maybe our Google Classroom users. Google Classroom, right, it always put the newest item at the bottom. And so if you were maybe a middle school teacher and you had a year-long class, you could really be scrolling for a while to get to, you know, maybe the material for May. And if we think about our struggling and resistant learners, that alone may sometimes feel like too much of a struggle for them. So reverse chronological, keep the current stuff at top. And then on the far right, you'll see what it might look like to do weekly folders. This can be great for junior or middle high school. Again, recommend the active color, the active folder in a different color. And then again, having the most recent on top. What I also love is that you can meld all three of these ideas, because you may have like a higher level of organization, maybe by subject, and then maybe within that, you're doing unit or even month, and then you're nesting it even further down using those weekly folders. And so again, as a classroom teacher, you know what fits your students' needs the best and can really think about what that might look like. Again, this idea of having internal nesting is really paramount. So what you'll see here is a picture of using those inner folders where I've numbered them. So this might work great for an upper elementary classroom, middle school, high school. And then inside that red lesson 2.4 folder, we have some further numbering and nesting to kind of help students to know what to do in order there. Because sometimes our students, can get lost. And so what we notice is that they would do 2.4.1, they would do that first, 2.4.2 second, 2.4.3, third, etc. So having that is a great way to sometimes cue those students on further. You do not need to use 2.4.1, right? If that was a middle school student may not be able to make sense of that, you could simply say, number 1, introductory information. Number 2, response. But having that numerical cueing is going to be very beneficial to your students. So here's some examples of this idea of using the most recent on top or reverse chronological order. And so our just don't do it picture on the far left, you see a teacher that used the date, which is great, kind of helped students know where to click, but they really had to scroll a fair amount and everything looks a little similar. So it's kind of hard, you have to really focus to pay attention whether you're on 923 or 924. But really, again, if we have those resistant learners, they may not be as likely to continue to scroll and find where the live action is at. So I really encourage this idea of training our students to know to look at the top is where your most recent information is going to be. And in Schoology, there's a lovely trick. I like to call it the magic green line. So if you're a Schoology user and you typically go to that add materials button, it does default to add your newest stuff at the bottom. You can click and drag it to the top. That's a little annoying. So you can hover in between something or even hover at the top of your course and this magic green dashed line appears and you can click it and add a material right there. And I'll show you that in just a moment. But I could hover here in between unit 3 and unit 2 and a magical green line would appear, click it, and it would add something new right there. So again, on the far right, we see a teacher who started with the unit structure, but inside that has used some internal nesting of then using weeks. And I also love that this teacher not only said it's week 19, but and included the dates. Because let's be honest, as a teacher, we may know that we are living in week 19 of school, but I can promise that any student is not going to know that it's week 19 of the school year. They may not even know the date unless they look at their iPhone. But using that idea of that date really does help to cue the student into where they need to go. So as I've demonstrated in many of these pictures, you've also seen this idea of color coding the current folder. And it does not matter what color structure you decide to use. But again, it does very nicely draw your eye to that folder that's different. When I first started using Schoology, I was teaching chemistry and I was so excited to do my folders in Roy G. Biv. So I would go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and then purple or violet. And then I would repeat that pattern over and over. And I thought I was so cool. But as we got into all of this virtual learning, I realized using Roy G. Biv wasn't as favorable as using a highlighted color and then keeping the others plain. And I really did find that students seem to have greater success with that. Or they just simply ask me less times where to click, right? So you might be saving yourself some frustration. Maybe it's totally self-serving, which is still a win. If your students are asking you, where do I go? If they're asking you that less often. And then here is another thought that some teachers really like. And this is an idea of having a previous work folder. So again, if you think about being, let's say, a middle school teacher, you run a year-long course. Let's say you're organizing by unit. You can really have a laundry list of units if you're teaching middle school science for the whole year. So you might want to color code the current folder, and then you might want to then keep dragging the old material into a previous work folder. And that will, again, focus students' eye on where the live action is at. It's going to keep some students feeling less overwhelmed and less distracted than they may if they see this giant list of units. And it kind of Marie Kondos your course. It keeps things looking neat and clean and tidy. In my district, one of the things we always say is we don't want garage sale courses. And so what we mean by that is we don't want random things just placed all over the place. We want to know that there's a section for science and a section for math, or there's a section for what is upcoming and a section for what we've already done. So again, the more that you can keep your course neat and tidy, the better off that will be for your students. And again, if you think about your brick and mortar classroom, a lot of these are principles that we use in our brick and mortar classroom. As teachers, we know the importance of cleaning up our rooms at the end of the day. So when students walk in the following morning, they're coming into that bright, neat, and organized classroom. We know that we highlight what you're doing today. Maybe it's on the board or something like that. And past learning might be kind of tucked away in a less obvious place. So these are just some ways that we are implementing those same principles, but in this type of a digital format. So a quick recap is thinking about how organized courses can lead to reduced frustration, certainly for you, but reduced frustration for your students, for their learning partners at home. And, if you are still in the throes of COVID quarantines in your district, you know that you have students, it seems like a revolving door of in and out of your classroom, but many of them are still trying to keep up at home. So if we can reduce their frustration, if they know where to find things, they're more likely to complete their work. So reducing frustration is going to lead to increased work completion. When they can find it, they can complete it. And then as a teacher, we know that when our students are engaging in that needed and necessary practice with the content, they're likely to have better outcomes. And so by having that reduced frustration, that organization of they can find what they need to do, they're more likely to complete that work, which can result in better application and transfer of that information, and again, a better student outcome. So with that in mind, here's my first sign of life. Give me a thumbs up, a little clap, a party hat if you're with me. Feel free to type into the chat if you had a question on any of these things that we've briefly talked about so far, on just kind of how to do some overall structure. Awesome. Some great feedback in the chat by our colleagues. All right, so the next thing I would love to talk about is how we can enhance the visuals that we present to students. So when thinking about Schoology specifically, you can update your course thumbnail photo, which is the little square photo that you'll see in the upper right-hand corner. I'm sorry, upper left-hand corner of your course. You can attach images to your folders in Schoology. And then a hack that is not very often talked about is that you can actually add a banner image at the very top of your course. Many people use it as an announcement area, like, hey, don't forget to turn in your permission slips on Friday. But you can actually embed an image there. And so you can use them as buttons for early L. Some teachers use it for their Bitmoji classroom to kind of make some easier navigation. Some teachers use it as their Zoom link to kind of reduce some of the Zoom bombing. So lots of great ways that we can use our visuals to really help key in those students. So first up is thinking about your course thumbnail photo. So the default course photo is what you see here in the lower left. It's a very plain, standard photo. Doesn't really offer any information in terms of what the course content is, who the teacher might be, or even what hour that course is offered. So I love recommending to my teachers to update that image to a thumbnail photo that is meaningful to the content. It's very helpful if it includes the teacher's name, and even better if it can use the hour. However, if you are in the secondary realm and teaching the same class multiple hours, you're likely to have linked courses in Schoology. And so in that moment, you would not want to include the hour in your thumbnail photo, because that thumbnail photo will display for all of your linked sections. So here are a few of my colleagues' favorite ones that I have seen. So Ms. Alcorn uses her little math Bitmoji. So it's great. A parent or a student is going to look at that course and know it's math and know the teacher's name. And again, we have this high EL population. And so our EL students who may not be able to read, certainly the cursive font there, they might be able to read that the name of the course is algebra, but they can definitely tell by that image that it is in fact a math class. Another great one, my Spanish teacher colleague uses DOS for her Spanish 2 class. And again, great image. She uses something that's representative for Spanish 2, Spanish 3, Spanish 4. And so again, her students and families are cued in to what the course is. And then the other example here, our beautiful sunflower garden for our 12th grade English teacher. While it isn't necessarily representative of a typical genre or of reading or of writing, it kind of conveys this dreamy landscape that we might be likely to think about in terms of poetry and writing. So those are great ideas. And to simply change this in Schoology, you hover over that generic image that they supply you with, and then this edit picture option comes up. You click it, and you can choose some of the other standard ones that they offer, which aren't really that fun. Or you can upload any image that you want. And some people are more attuned to graphic design and editing photos. If that's not your jam, I highly recommend the free website Canva, C-A-N-V-A. I'll type that in here. And Canva even offers a free upgrade for educators where you can get some more functions and capabilities. But Canva is just a great tool for doing some basic graphic design. You can take you can use a template, you can edit it. They have everything from your LinkedIn banner to a Facebook banner to a Twitter banner. Pretty much anything you could envision you want to do, they have a template for it. And it's free. Any other Canva users out there? Little thumbs up or clap or anything if anybody else has ever. Oh, good. We got a couple. In fact, my sixth grader tonight, because we had this snow day already announced, he ran home from school. He hopped on Canva because he's seen mom use it. And he made himself a little snow blowing business flyer and then printed it off and delivered it in the subdivision tonight. And he already has like 2 customers. I'm like, yay, like 12-year-old businessman. So we're excited. Okay, so another great idea is using folder images. And again, this is great regardless of the age of our learners, from our kinders all the way up to even adult ed. It just helps you to know where you're going. So I love, a lot of teachers just use clip art, right? And they just can download the photo. You can search many places where you can find free images and use an image that is representative of the discipline. The picture on the left is an art teacher colleague of mine, and her ceramics class is what this photo is from. And so the units for ceramics are representative of the project or what they're creating. And so she uses her folder images to display exemplars, which I think is a really great example. And then the middle photo there is a Schoology course that I maintain for my staff. And so I, again, use Canva. The template I have used there is the Etsy shop banner template, because why create something when the template's already there? And I just type in my folder, the name of the folder, I use the logo for the company, and then all the training resources that I have for those different vendors. Teachers know right where to go. So again, this idea of using images, great for young learners, great for an EL population, and certainly great for those parents and any learning partners that we might have at home. So definitely a great tool to make things more friendly. And then here's another one. This is actually a required element in my district. At the very top of every course, teachers are required to have a daily or a weekly agenda that tells students exactly what they need to do each day. So if we again think back to our brick and mortar classrooms, this is very similar to what we would do. We'd write it on a board, maybe we would have had chart paper, or even we would have put something going all the way back to the overhead projector, we would have shown something. So now we use these daily agendas, and students can look at them, or the teacher can still project them on the board and know exactly where they need to go. The secret with this is if we require our teachers to display it so that the slide deck is open. And so to do that, we use a Schoology page, which is kind of an underutilized, amazing feature in Schoology. But you take the Schoology page, you insert the content from the Google Drive resource app by choosing the slide deck, click this little button that says display inline, and it displays open. And then our students know that every day the teacher is responsible for putting today as slide number 1. So on the left, if today was Monday, January 18th, that slide would be number 1 in the slide deck. Slide 2 the student that was absent on Friday could scroll back or go to the next slide and see what they should have done on Friday, January 15th. Some teachers don't want to have to update that every single day. Totally makes sense. So then we use these weekly agendas that students or families can click over between the tabs. You can also do this with a Google Doc. Also, if we have some Microsoft districts out there, you can also still do the same thing, but you're pulling from, I believe it's called OneNote, I believe is what your drive is called. So you would use the OneNote app. I believe that Schoology has integrated. But again, great way to let students know what's happening in class that day, and works really well for students that are in person and also for anyone that is at home. So here's another example of what we might use for these types of daily agendas if we're using a Google slide. So we might include our learning targets. Many of our teachers might include a brief video, like if it's a daily walkthrough, especially in our virtual classrooms. We have some asynchronous virtual courses. And so in those courses, the teacher will provide like a little daily video to walk the student through what they're doing. We ask teachers to post any upcoming things to note, whether it's assessments, maybe field trips, maybe reminders that Friday is pajama day, things like that. And then a little idea of what we're doing today. So this is just an example of what we might include in that daily agenda. And again, we're a Google district, but you can still do the same exact process if you're a Microsoft district. So here is this idea of using a banner announcement. So the announcement goes at the very, very, very top of your Schoology page before any of your classroom materials get loaded. Typically, it's a blank white space. Many teachers might use it when they go to their updates area and type in an announcement. Maybe please bring your textbook to class tomorrow, or please be sure to bring your printed copy of your rough draft for your narrative essay. But it doesn't have to be only text. And so there's a very neat little hack where you can take an image that you've put in a Google Doc, and you can actually take that image and copy and paste it into that announcement area. I also have used Canva, yet again, to create some of these. My favorite Canva template here is the Facebook banner. And that just seems to come out to be what I think is the perfect size for that Schoology banner announcement area. But what some of our teachers have done at the very top, again, this is the course that I maintain with training things for my staff. At the bottom, these little icons are hot links to my folders inside of Schoology. So you can actually have hot links in this banner announcement, which is why some teachers can use it for a Bitmoji classroom. This middle photo on the right is from an elementary classroom, and they've set it up as buttons, which is very user-friendly, especially if your early L students are on an iPad, because then they can just click those buttons and go right to the folder that need be. And at the very bottom, Senora Abel's Spanish class, students actually click that button and it takes them right to her Zoom classroom. So again, it a little bit reduces some Zoom bombing because students, it's not as easy for students to copy and paste a link and share it other places, because students have to be enrolled in the Schoology class to see the banner photo, to click it, to get to the Zoom link. So you'll see here, I have a just under 2-minute video that walks you through this hack. I am not going to play it now, but it is a great tool that you can use and look back at later to kind of walk yourself through that. But really, really great, useful tool. Hey everyone, let me show you, pause that. All right, so I'm going to pause here on these kind of, I think, 3 main things that we did so far with visuals. We talked about your thumbnail photo. Actually, there's 4 things. We talked about your course thumbnail photo. We talked about folder images. We talked about the daily agenda slides. And then we talked about this hack of using a banner announcement with an image. So in the chat, another sign of life for my colleagues out here, type in which of these 4 might you be interested in trying? Something with the thumbnail photo, something with a folder image, perhaps the daily agenda, or even a banner. Okay, loving the agendas, folders. Very helpful for ELs, definitely. These images are great. And Jenna, with the daily agendas, I'm going to have all my contact information at the end of this slideshow. So if there are ever any problems or specific things you get stuck on, you're going to know how to send me an email and I can send you very specific directions or help walk you through it. Yay, lots of great things to try. So fun. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about something called student completion rules. And this really became a crucial tool, I would say, for survival of many of our teachers during COVID closure, because we were finding that so many students didn't want to engage in maybe viewing a video or notes or practice, and they just wanted to jump to where they could earn the points. And they didn't really want to sometimes engage. But as the professionals, we know what our students need and where they need some of that practice and engagement in the content. And so this allows you to set that pathway. That student has to maybe view a video, maybe do a reading, maybe post something on a discussion board, and then maybe complete an exit ticket before they get into something else. And so it's really nice that it allows you to keep that student in their learning path. So with these student completion rules, you can set the exact order for students to complete a series of tasks in. You'll notice in this picture on the right, the bottom 3 items are kind of grayed out. And what that means is that the student cannot click on them currently. If they hover over them, their cursor will not change to the little cursor hand. So they can only select the very top item at the moment. So they have to finish that first before they can move on. So this is really great if you have a multi-step lesson and you want students, again, to follow that order. So when you're doing it, when you wanted to set these up, you would add all of your materials that you would want the students to do. And then you go to options, which is the button immediately next to add materials in your course. And then you'll see the student completion rules button where you can then set that pathway. There are actually two different ways that you can use this, which is really, again, a big benefit of having this flexibility in functionality. You can set the rule on entire folders so that students have to complete all of folder 1 before they can move to folder 2. And many of us may be used to that if we've taken a distance learning course, maybe a graduate course. That is a very common way. Module 2 is not unlocked until you've completed module 1. So very similar here. Again, great way to do this with students. What I also love is that you don't just have to complete module 1. You could set the rule that, let's say there is a formative assessment is the last item in module 1. You can actually set a rule that says students must score 80% to move on. So it doesn't necessarily just mean students had to complete it, because we know they could complete it and get a 25%, but you can set a score minimum for them to move on. The second way you can use student completion rules is on materials inside of a folder. So inside of the folder, students have to first watch these video notes. After the video notes for section 8.1, then they have to watch the video notes for 8.2, and finally they have to watch the video notes for section 8.3. Now, this is not to say that our savvy high school students can't find ways around some of these lovely things. They could click to view the video, but not finish the video. There are always ways around. But again, it just can kind of help us a little bit to keep them on point. And I see a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to come back to in a moment. So just know that I see you, and I'm going to get back to you in a second. So if you want to set these rules up, again, here's kind of some step-by-step directions that we don't have to necessarily go through in super great detail. But again, you're going to add all of the items that you would like students to do. Once they're all added, you're then going to go to options in that folder, in that course, and select student completion. And then you can choose the order, and if there is a rule that you want them to do, it might be to view, it might be to make a submission, it might mean to post to a discussion board, or if it is an assessment, and I use the word assessment because that's what Schoology calls it, but many times you can use an assessment as an exit ticket in a formative way, as a checkpoint, but you can set a score for that assessment in order to let students move on. So again, this is how to go through and set these up on materials in a folder versus setting them up as folder, folder, folder. Again, very, very, very similar process. If you are ever in a situation where your district might be running asynchronous learning or on-demand learning, I really highly, highly, highly recommend setting up student completion rules anytime you're having asynchronous content. Also, in my district, in Schoology, we require our teachers to have an unpublished folder, so like a hidden folder, that is an emergency subplan. And so in that emergency subplan, it might be a great place to use some student completion rules so that students are doing what they need to do in order and not getting lost along the way, because you never know what kind of sub you're going to get these days. Or even if you'll get a sub these days, that's a whole other thing. So then if your students are using the student completion rule, sometimes you want to view where they're at in the process. And so there isn't a button you click to see student progress. You can scroll through all of your names and it tells you what percentage they are through the rules that you've set. So 25%, 33%, 75%, whatever it may be, or it will give you a green check mark if the student has completed the entire set of rules. So again, another great way to progress monitor where your students might be. Again, here's a little tutorial. Again, you can watch this later. We don't need to watch that now, but helpful for you to look back at if you are interested in trying some of these in your own classes. Now, using student completion rules as a new layer of computer programming and savviness, and like anything else, sometimes there needs to be some troubleshooting. So here are three levels of troubleshooting, and I've never encountered a situation where we can't figure it out by the third point where you're contacting your school system admin. Almost always the first or second round totally takes care of the problem. So again, great thing to hang on to, take a look at later if you go ahead and use these in your classroom. And there's a link here for a Schoology or a little tip sheet on using student completion rules. So I have now walked you through three big things for you to think about in your classroom. We've talked about thinking about how you can organize your folders and their structures. We've talked about how you can use visuals. Those visuals can be your thumbnail, they can be on your folders, they can be your daily agenda or a banner photo. And then we've looked at how you can set up these student completion rules as a way to create a learning path for your students. So I am going to give you all a little bit of playtime here. I think our plan is 10 minutes of playtime. And during this time, I am going to be here. You can ask questions out loud. You can put them in the chat. I'm going to kind of go back through. And then after these 10 minutes, Chad and I will kind of wrap up our session and give you a kind of few directions. And then we will all get to enjoying our Monday evening and hoping for a snow day for those of you that don't have one yet. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press our little 10-minute timer here and kind of go through the chat. And I would love if you hang out with us and go through and try one of the things you've seen tonight. Like we had one of our colleagues getting ready to head out. So why don't we just super quickly go ahead and talk about our upcoming sessions that we have in some of the future MEA sessions that the Center for Leadership and Learning has been planning and doing such a great job of this year. So I'm excited to offer some more Schoology sessions around differentiation and how you can really create those paths, but for different students at different levels. And then again, some more information on the student completion rules. I mentioned Schoology pages, which I really love, and they're super underutilized. And then ways that you can optimize some of the integrations that Schoology has with things like Pear Deck or Edpuzzle or Turnitin, and just a ton of different educational vendors. So I really enjoy seeing all of you here tonight on a Tuesday. Again, I am always happy to help a colleague when it comes to anything, especially with Schoology. So you can find me on Twitter @educator. And here is my email, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions about Schoology that you may have.
Wow, thank you so much, Kathleen. So, like I said, this is one of those sessions where, you know, again, I hearken back to when I was still in the classroom in the dark ages, when I was really cutting edge in technology, and I really I dreamt about having these sorts of tools available to me to help organize and optimize my classes and help kind of enable and empower my students, to get information and also help my workload, and make my workflow much more efficient. So I love these sessions. Thank you so much. Um, I want to remind everybody that this session is being recorded, so it will be available in a few weeks once we get it up on the site. If you are interested, and you too would like to contribute some professional learning ideas or content to your colleagues, you can do that. So let me know if you're interested, even if you're not sure, not just send me an email, say, yeah, I'm thinking about it, Chad, I'm not sure, I don't know. And I would be happy to talk to you about it and allay any fears you may have. And we do compensate members for doing that. Just want to let you know. So let me know if you're interested. The other thing is that if someone can help me real quick, I just created this link for the slideshow. I think it was locked the last time I had it. If you can maybe check that, make sure that link is actually a good one. It should create a forced copy for you. So if somebody can let me know if that worked. It worked. Thank you, Chelsea.
It's forced copy. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So awesome. So with that being said, we do have some time. If those of you have some particular questions, this would be a great time. You can ask them. We're at the end of our formal content right now, so you can unmute and ask questions. Otherwise, if you were preparing for that snow day, and you have to go out and make sure you got gas in the snow blower, or what have you, or you have your plow guy. You got to have a plow guy. You live in the country, you got a plow guy, and so make sure you got your plow guy set up so they know to hit your driveway in the morning, or just get some dinner. So other than that, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I look forward to seeing you in our future sessions. We have a session tomorrow on assessment and SEL, which is going to be very, very interesting. So I hope to see you then. But other than that, thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.